smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Hour number 3. Welcome to it, our third and final hour here on this Friday on the early line, our final hour of this week here on TEL. And after this conversation could not come soon enough. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. We'll start by talking about Kentucky's new hire of Mark Pope. Then we'll set the stage for second round Friday at Augusta National Golf Club 2024 Masters. We'll go around the Daily Diamond Dash in MLB and a full slate both in Major League Baseball on this Friday, 15 games, all 30 clubs, and in the NBA, third to last day of the NBA regular season, all 30 NBA teams around the association DRS, 15 matchups to break down with a ton of implications still remaining here to end out the regular season for the playoffs on the horizon.
Yeah, we were just talking about the NBA, and it's just so much fun to talk about. It feels like it's refreshing here because, again, we just bang on the regular season as if the players don't care about it. Nobody cares. Let's just get to the playoffs. But before we get to the playoffs, we've been in playoff mode for the last week and a half because every single day we do this show right here on the SportsGrid Network, the times are changing here. Different teams jockeying for position. We can finally see the finish line, which is going to be on Sunday in the NBA, and it is going to be madness here to see who's in the play-in rounds, who escapes the play-in rounds. It's great stuff here. It's a great time for sports. And also, yeah, we're watching the Masters live as we go as well. Expanded golf action today. More than one round. Who says no? Not us. Certainly not us.
Not us at all. We will have some second-round best bets for you. We welcome in our SportsGrid radio audience here to our third and final hour. It is a Friday on the early line. You're listening on Sirius XM, channel 159. All of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the mix as well. He is Donnie. I am Ben. Live shot-by-shot coverage, by the way. The only place on radio to get it, Sirius XM, channel 92. It's Masters Radio. Okay, we asked the public about the Kentucky job. Is it a top 3 job in college basketball? You know my standpoint. I would say unequivocally, yes, it is. Top 3, top 5, it is certainly there. Again, I would say top 3. Donnie doesn't believe so, and sadly for me, the public doesn't believe so as well. 60% of the public saying no at SportsGrid, where this poll lives. Kentucky is not a top 3 job in college basketball. I love the rationale from the public because I've already heard the reasoning from my co-host, Donnie Rightside.
Exactly. It's just simple here. A top job means you're going to get the top candidates who can't wait to get that job here. It's not to say that you can't win at Kentucky. The money's not going to be good at Kentucky. But when you weigh those law of averages, and also I saw Dan Hurley make an interesting point in this day and age because typically it's all about the money. Now, granted, I'm going to double down on my Kentucky stance in just a moment here on why I do still think that they had the possibility to get a big name, even though they went with Mark Pope. So let's set that aside. But Dan Hurley basically said, look, at this day and age for myself, like how much money can I actually spend? Is it saying to myself, I love UConn so much that I'm willing to make a few $1 million less just because my quality of life is fantastic? I really think that was a direct shot at Kentucky's fan base itself, saying, I'm going to come down there as a 2-time national champion. Sure, I bring on the pressure. I don't mind the pressure. But in year number 2, if a couple bad breaks go our way and we get knocked out in the Sweet 16, you will be calling for my head to be fired, where, as I said in UConn, that's not the case. I already have the track record of winning championships here. I get a much longer leash, and if I want to step away, fine. They'll probably build a statue for me if I can get the number 3 here. Meanwhile, if I win at Kentucky, everybody will say, Ben, oh, look, you're supposed to win at Kentucky. I won 3 times in 6 years. Yeah, well, you were supposed to do that here. Because, again, it's a professional franchise in college basketball. Now, here's the interesting part about that hire by Pope, which yesterday on the radio I was talking to Kevin about. I said, let's be surprised at this. Dan Hurley said no at a certain price point. You know, you take a look at Alabama's head coach Nate Oates, said no at a certain price point. When you're not getting those top candidates, I would have been interested to see if we went another few days and Kentucky just goes, I got to make some phone calls here as an athletic department to my biggest donors and say, if you really want to keep Kentucky in the forefront here, I need more money, which means, hey, Dan Hurley, I know we offered you $8 million. How about 15? I guarantee you, Dan Hurley would not say, well, you know what, Kentucky's not really a job I wanted. He would be there. The same with Nate Oates. I'm interested to see what the initial approach was from Kentucky, because I do believe Kentucky, Ben, thought to themselves, we're the top program. If I just pick up the phone, you guys are going to scream and run and try to kick down my door to get this job here. That didn't happen. But round number 2, where you make that second phone call and go like, I told you 10 before. It's now 13. It's 14. It's 15. It's a 6-year guaranteed job here for you. Will you take it? I do believe some of those guys would have moved on there, Ben, but I think Kentucky thought of themselves on a higher pedestal than what others actually thought of them. That's all.
So there are many different angles of this conversation about the Kentucky job in general, about the hire of Mark Pope, and the names that they missed out on. I still believe Kentucky, one of the bluest of bloods in all of college basketball, even with its standards and high expectation in Lexington, is a top 3 job in the sport. I think Donnie and I would both agree that Duke and North Carolina are up there. But let's look at the 4 biggest openings that we have seen in college basketball in the last 3 to 4 years or so, from the storied programs that is. Duke, North Carolina. It was 2 former players at those institutions, 2 assistants on those coaching staffs that left under Roy Williams, Hubert Davis, under Coach K, John Shire. So the legacy hire, right? The succession plan. And none of us question anything about it. It's just a great job. Bring it in-house. The Brotherhood in Durham. Whoop-de-freaking do. And for Hubert Davis, he reached the Final Four in his opening year as a head coach at UNC. Let's go outside of that. Villanova, Jay Wright. He leaves. Kyle Neptune, his former assistant coach, becomes the head coach for the Wildcats. They have missed the NCAA tournament now 2 consecutive years. Jim Boeheim, after more than 4 decades, steps down at Syracuse. His longtime assistant, Red Autry, becomes the new head coach. We have seen a lot of in-hiring when legends walk away from a spot. And let's call a spade a spade. Calipari walked away from Kentucky because of the idea that he had not reached a Sweet 16 in 5 consecutive years. They were going to bring him back because the buyout was far too large, and Cal said, no, you guys don't love me enough for what I have done here. Well, what have you done exactly, Cal, in the modern era, in the last 10 years? You haven't reached the Final Four since 2015, and you haven't seen the second weekend since 2019. So all of these ideas, Donnie, that Kentucky is not a top 3 job because they didn't get Dan Hurley or they didn't get Billy Donovan. We didn't say the same things when Duke went in-house to John Shire or North Carolina tabbed Hubert Davis as the next head guy.
Yeah, but they were succession plans. We knew that was coming along. You're also talking about legendary coaches handpicking their right-hand man. So, again, we're going to say, okay, we trust the coach at that point. Maybe that grill heats up in a couple years at this point if it doesn't work out in either direction. But Kentucky didn't have that luxury because they basically threw their superstar coach out. Exactly. And every other superstar coach is going like, you'll probably do the same thing for me, whereas other institutions might not. And unless I win 2 out of 3 national championships over the next 4 years, I'm not going to be loved there. Why should I go? That's all. It's just that simple.
Exactly. Kentucky didn't have the same luxury, and yet we hold them to a completely different standard and expectation in our assessment of top 3 programs. More on the early line next.
If you passed him up as a Heisman Trophy winner and he lights the league on fire like C.J. Stroud over a Bryce Young, you might not make it as a head coach or in your regime here. I just don't think they can pass over Daniels at number 2.
He's sitting at 5.8 goals, saved above average. He has been standing on top of his head for this team, but defense has to help out a little bit. The Red Wings defense comes alive just a bit. I think that they're definitely going to punch their card.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like, I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Less than a week remains in the NHL regular season before arguably one of the best postseasons in all of sport. That is the Stanley Cup playoffs. So to get you set for those final few spots in the Stanley Cup postseason and what you need to know down this final week of the regular season, NHL's Pete Jensen joins us live right here on this Friday on the Early Line on SportsGrid. Pete, as always, we appreciate the time. Thank you for being here on the Early Line.
Anytime, guys. Love joining you and love the stretch run of the NHL season where it still feels like a bunch of teams are still alive in the Eastern Conference for those final two spots. But obviously teams like the Islanders and the Penguins have caught everybody by surprise and appear to be running away with this thing. Still pretty close, though, with a couple days to go.
Both teams winning in overtime thrillers on home ice last night. The Isles have the third and final spot of the playoff bids from the Metropolitan Division. At this moment, Pittsburgh holds on to the second and final wild card spot in the Eastern Conference standings. We'll look at what all this means in just a moment. But, Pete, we start with the game last night in Pittsburgh. The Pens gave up 2 goals to the Red Wings in that third and final period to see the extra session. But Erik Karlsson delivers the game winner for Pittsburgh in OT. The Pens win on home ice, a -156 home money line favorite, 6-5 over Detroit. How significant of a victory was this for the Penguins last night?
Oh, it was insane, and that's why they went out and got Erik Karlsson in the offseason. He's been underwhelming this season, about a 50-point drop-off compared to last year when he won the Norris. But when you have Vin EK65 like that on the ice in overtime, not to mention guys like Crosby, who assisted on that goal, and a milestone for him with 1,000 career assists. I mean, still one of the top 5-10 players in the NHL, even at his age, plus Malkin and Letang, and you still got the band together here. The crazy thing, though, when you look at the tail of the tape for the Penguins this year, is that they sold Jake Gensel, who was in his contract year. That's Crosby's longtime trusted line mate. They traded him in the conference to the Hurricanes, and they might match up with Carolina in the first round, but nobody at that particular moment, including myself, would have ever dreamt that Pittsburgh would be in a playoff spot after about a 10-point deficit just about a month ago. It's insane.
Playing their best hockey at the end of the season. That's certainly what Pittsburgh is doing here. If we do take a look at that wild card race, you take a look at the Tampa Bay Lightning in that top spot there, then followed by the Penguins, Capitals, Wings, and Flyers. 86 points for the Penguins. The next three teams below them all tied at 85. Now, myself here, Pete, as a Flyers fan, the dreaded 3-point game happened yesterday, which was an overtime victory for Pittsburgh going up against Detroit. But if we're looking at that final spot here, is it the Penguins to grasp, or can one of those other teams, in your opinion, claim that final wild card spot here?
I'm not a believer in Washington. They don't have good underlying metrics. I don't know how they're still around. Spencer Carberry deserves a ton of praise for that. Obviously, it's an older team and stuff like that with Ovechkin and Oshie and stuff like that, John Carlson. They're hanging around. Philly is ahead of schedule. I'm still high on that team long term, but only one win in their past 9 or 10 games isn't cutting it. I will say Detroit is ahead of schedule as well and has a younger core, plus the addition of Patrick Kane this season. So if anybody's going to steal it from Pittsburgh, it could still be Detroit. You saw them come back from a multi-goal deficit in the game against Pittsburgh to earn a point, and that was a key, crucial point with a couple games to go. One bad game, one blunder could really tilt the scale for or against Pittsburgh. So Detroit's doing a nice job hanging around.
That's how impactful last night's result was in Pittsburgh in OT. The Pens with a point lead over 4 or 3 teams that are behind them. It is going to be a great final week of this NHL regular season that will feel like Stanley Cup playoff action. Now from the teams to the individual races, Pete, we look at that Hart Trophy for the MVP award virtually in the National Hockey League. Colorado's Nathan MacKinnon, a pretty hefty favorite at this moment, minus 480. Nikita Kucherov from Tampa, plus 470. The odds would say, Pete, that MacKinnon has already won the Hart, but do you think this race is still up in the air?
It is. It's going to be interesting to see if the Art Ross Trophy, the scoring title, correlates with the winner of the Hart Trophy. I don't know that it necessarily will, because Kucherov's starting to run away with that trophy for the scoring title, and he has done an impeccable job this season. Tampa Bay has missed key players all season because of injuries, whether Vasilevsky earlier in the year, and Sergachev for the past couple of months, and he is just head and shoulders above anybody else on that team, and having one of the great seasons of the past 30 years very quietly. But a lot of that production comes on the power play, so people lean toward Nathan MacKinnon, who leads the NHL in even strength points and has shattered his previous career high. So it's going to be a barn burner the last couple of games.
Barn burner as well here in the President's Trophy race to claim the top status here in the NHL in the regular season. You got 4 teams within 3 points of each other. The Rangers at 110 points, the Stars at 109, the Hurricanes at 107, and the Bruins at 107. The Rangers last night took on a Philadelphia Flyers team leaking oil and got waxed at home in the Garden. Is it the Rangers? Is it the Stars, Hurricanes, Bruins, or somebody else that you believe can claim that top spot here, Pete?
I mean, Dallas is really good. Carolina is really good. Those are the 2 deepest teams in the NHL, in my opinion. And with how good Freddie Anderson has been since coming back from the blood clotting issue, I just love what he brings to that team. In addition to Gensel and Kuznetsov, who they traded for at the deadline. It's interesting, though, because there is that kind of President's Trophy curse the past decade or so in the NHL. So you really wonder, do these teams really want it? I think they probably do, especially if it's going to mean playing, let's say in the East, a team like Detroit in the first round or Philly, which would really be a lopsided matchup on paper. So I do not think, though, that the Rangers would want to play the Islanders in the first round, and that could certainly happen. Whether they fall into the 2-3 hole and the Islanders get the third in the Metro, or if the Rangers win the President's Trophy and Pittsburgh passes New York. Pittsburgh plays New York Islanders last game of the season, so that could determine the matchups right there if they both get in.
The 2013 Chicago Blackhawks, the last President's Trophy winner for the best regular season record to also win Lord Stanley's Cup. Now, when you think about that, 10 years without the best regular season team winning the Stanley Cup, it's a very defining curse at this moment. And only one of the past 10 winners of the President's Trophy has even seen the conference finals in the Stanley Cup postseason. So let's look at those Stanley Cup odds, Pete, now that the postseason picture is starting to take a bit of a deeper shape at this moment? As you look across the league in this final week, where might some value be to win that Stanley Cup this year?
I think you have to consider, just with the recent track record, I think 4 of the past 5 years have seen a surprise team make the Stanley Cup final. I mean, can go back to 2019 when the Blues went all the way. Nobody saw it coming. Vegas last year was a bit of a surprise how they limped into the playoffs and then, hit their stride getting Mark Stone back. So I think you look at some of the hottest teams in the league right now, certainly the Tampa Bay Lightning. They have a proven pedigree in going deep in the playoffs with the Kucherovs and the Hedmans and Stamkos being in a contract situation moving forward. I mean, he's got a lot to play for. I like the way Tampa's playing since March 1st, one of the best teams in the league. And then also Nashville out west. If Nashville plays anybody, any of those top seeds, whether it's, Dallas or Vancouver or something like that, like nobody's going to want to play Nashville. They have elite players as well with Roman Josi, UC Saros, and Philip Forsberg at every position. They've made shrewd moves all season long. Andrew Brunette should be one of the top Coach of the Year candidates or finalists, in my opinion. And Nashville had that 18-game point streak just a few weeks ago, so they're locked and loaded here.
Yeah. 5 games on the ice tonight in the NHL and playoff ramifications. The Blues looking up at the Golden Knights, trying to catch Vegas for that final wild card spot in the Western Conference. Going to be a great Friday night in the National Hockey League. And it's always a great Friday when Pete Jensen joins us here on the Early Line on SportsGrid. Pete, thank you so much. More on the Early Line comes your way next.
If you passed him up as a Heisman Trophy winner and he lights the league on fire like C.J. Stroud over a Bryce Young, you might not make it as a head coach or in your regime here. I just don't think they can pass over Daniels at number 2.
He's sitting at 5.8 goals saved above average. He has been standing on top of his head for this team, but defense has to help him out a little bit. The Red Wings defense comes alive just a bit. I think that they're definitely going to punch their card.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
A full Friday slate around Major League Baseball on the diamond. Man, you got to love working with Donnie right side. Full Friday slate in MLB. All 30 MLB clubs in action. 15 games on the docket as of right now. Listen, it's mid-April. Weather could always be a factor. And if the game is played, watch out for some wind. As we start to break down today's Major League Baseball slate, if wind is going to factor in, DRS will tell you all about it. That is the expected case, DRS, right in the land today between the Guardians and the Yankees. Now, New York has a minus 144 road money line price as the favorite right now, total at 8.5. But we expect it to be wet and windy in Cleveland today.
Yeah, take a look at this. 46 degrees, which is going to be cold as is. 46 and rain. That's really cold. 46 with rain and 25 mile an hour winds. Not a great day here in Cleveland nonetheless, but two first-place teams going up against it. And by the way, that 25 mile an hour wind, Ben, that's not blowing out. It's one of the few games that is going to be blowing in here, which we have a couple spots that we should be able to take advantage of today. But let's just look at the focus here going up against Clark Schmidt, the right-handed pitcher here for the Yankees. If you take a look at his season last year, Ben, 694 batters he's faced. Take a look at this. Against lefties, a 197 ISO power number, which is elevated, and also couple that with a 381 weighted on base percentage. Not very good. But let's flip it over to this season. And again, we don't have a ton of statistics to work off. Roughly 40 batters he's faced. But if we take a look at this, he's got a high ISO power number and weighted on base percentage if we include both lefty and righty batters. But let's take a look last year where he struggled against lefties. That hasn't been the case this season. Again, only 14 batters he's faced from the left-hand side. But how about this? An ISO of 071 and a weighted on base percentage of 218. That is really, really good. But again, only 14 batters. If you look at the right-handed batters he faced, Ben, take a look at this. A 280 ISO and a weighted on base percentage of 472. That's terrible. So immediately your focus would be going to the Cleveland Guardians and saying to yourself, okay, the right-handed batter should get the best of Clark Schmidt here. And typically in Major League Baseball, you have the mass majority of your lineup, usually right-handed batters, maybe 3 or 4 maximum as a lefty in the lineup. But take a look at Cleveland today as they're going to line up with the projected starting lineup. Kwan, lefty. Jimenez, lefty. Ramirez, lefty. Naylor, lefty. Brennan, lefty. Naylor, lefty. And also Rocchio is a switch hitter who will be batting from the left-handed spot here. So, I mean, it's almost a spot where you say you should be able to take advantage of Clark Schmidt based on last year's statistics, as you want as many left-handed batters in the lineup as possible. But this year, it's been the exact opposite. So if you're basing off of, well, I think he's going to revert back to form, you should be loving the Guardians today as their lineup has a ton of lefties. But if you're just basing it on 2024 statistics, Ben, it's a tough matchup for those Cleveland Guardians. Having said that, I don't know if this game does get played. It's probably going to stay under with those windy, cold conditions. That's probably the best look of it.
You tell me 46 degrees and 25 mile per hour winds blowing in. I'm going to take my shot on the under 8.5, even if the metrics do say Cleveland should be able to put up some offensive runs against Clark Schmidt. By the way, this is a matchup of the best two teams in the American League in these first 2 weeks. The Yankees 10-3, Cleveland 9-3, two best records around the AL. Something we might have said last year, certainly in the American League Championship Series, in the in-state showdown between the Rangers and the Astros. Texas, the reigning World Series champs, not off to a bad start, 7-6. In fact, the Rangers, the only team in the American League West ERS above 500. Houston, worst record in the division, now 4-10 after being swept this week in Kansas City. But the odds makers aren't going anywhere when it comes to the Astros, and they shouldn't. There's 162 games, and sure, the Stros have struggled through their first 14, but Houston booked as a home favorite tonight.
Yeah, and take a look at this. Let's look at the matchup with Dane Dunning on the mound going up against the Astros lineup. It seems like the Astros going to have to hit this way out of their team slump right now because their starting pitching certainly hasn't helped them out a lot. And you take a look at that total listed at the FanDuel Sportsbook, Ben, 9.5, which what that means. 10 runs you're going to have to get a total. So we're expecting runs. But let's take a look at the pitching matchup with Dunning this year. Last year, if we look at him, struggled a little bit with left-handed batters to the tune of a 348 weighted on base percentage, but 406 right-handed batters he faced as a right-handed pitcher, Ben, he was stellar. A 118 ISO power number and a 289 weighted on base percentage. That's great. So if we look to this year, 53 batters he's faced so far in this early season, 18 of those batters from the left side, he's been terrible against those lefties. A 429 ISO power number and a weighted on base percentage of 388. If you look at the right-handed batters, he's once again been phenomenal against those guys, Ben. A 133 ISO and a weighted on base percentage of 272 through 35 batters he's faced. So the question's going to be, how does that Astros lineup line up against Dunning? As I just told you, struggled with lefties last year, struggling with lefties this year. If I look at that lineup, it's Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker, the only two lefties due up in that starting lineup today as we anticipate. The other 7 batters, all from the right side. So for myself, I'd say, okay, if I'm looking for RBI props, it would be Alvarez and Tucker and nobody else. But from a side perspective, without even looking at Houston's pitching matchup here, that's a terrible matchup here. And also talking about the Astros that are flailing around right now and can't get out of their own way, being in the basement in the AL West. For me, it's only the Rangers to take a look at today for me, Ben.
And Texas is the road underdog at this moment. Yeah. Line working just a tad. The Astros a -130 home money line favorite with JP France on the bump as of right now. Great interleague series about to get started this weekend at Camden Yards. The Milwaukee Brewers in first place in the early going in the National League Central, an 8-3 mark. The Baltimore Orioles have won 3 in a row after the sweep in Fenway this week, now 8-4. Game number 1 of this set tonight in Baltimore. In the O's, as of this moment, a slight home favorite, -118. Over under 8.5. What do we see tonight in Camden Yards?
Both of these lineups cooking with grease against right-handed pitchers, and both starting pitchers tonight are right-handed pitchers. And also, we talked about those last 2 games, wind blowing in there out in Cleveland. We just talked about a dome game where wind's not going to factor in. As we get back to the East Coast, about 60-degree temperatures at start time tonight. And how about this? A wind blowing out to right field at 13 miles an hour in Baltimore. So we do have some plus conditions here that we can look at. And as I told you, the lineups are very good on both sides as they relate to right-handed pitching. But here's the factor. Let's take a look here and look at, let's go with the Baltimore lineup first before we take a look at Milwaukee. Wells will be on the mound here today. Actually, you know what? Let me just flip this around 2 seconds. All right, there we go.
Yeah.
Baltimore's lineup. Gunnar Henderson, 333 ISO power number. O'Hearn, 261. Mountcastle, 231. Mullins, 2. You get the point here. They can really hammer away. But Freddie Peralta has actually struggled here against right-handed batters early in the season in 2024. ISO power number 286. That means if you can get a hold of one of those baseballs, you can really rock it. Now, the question's going to be a lot of left-handed batters in the lineup tonight for the Orioles. Henderson, Rutschman, Santander, O'Hearn, Mullins, Cowser, and also Holiday are all left-handed batters tonight. How does that focus in on Freddie Peralta? Well, take a look at this, Ben. 26 batters he's faced from the left-hand side this year, a 0 ISO and a 122 weighted on base percentage. So some of these lineup that look like they should be murderer's row based on the early season statistics, the pitcher's actually getting the better matchups. We don't want that, Ben. We want him to be struggling against left-handed batters tonight so those left-handed batters can use that wind to their advantage and blast baseballs off of the warehouse in right field here. But if you're looking at that Milwaukee Brewers lineup, maybe the best presenting lineup right now in the early season against right-handed pitching. The weighted on base percentages here for the Brewers, 349, 499, 397, 337, 333. Every single batter is a green light in that lineup. So if we're focusing on what Wells has done good this year, he's been average at best, a 174 ISO, a weighted on base percentage of 317. So for me, I actually like the Milwaukee Brewers today going up against the Orioles just based on the early season lineup and how those pitchers are faring against said batters.
And Christian Yelich has been great to start for Milwaukee. Now we go late night to Los Angeles, the Southern California showdown between the Padres and the Dodgers, who, of course, have already met this year, but that was over in a 2-game set in Seoul, South Korea. The second game in Seoul was Yoshinobu Yamamoto's debut for the Dodgers. and it wasn't good. Only one inning of work and gave up 5 earned runs. But since that point, he has had 2 performances of shutout baseball. Can Yoshi Yamamoto bounce back tonight against the Padres? The odds makers expect that to be the case. LA nearly a $2 favorite at home.
Yeah, no, I do think he bounces back tonight because you like to take one of those pictures so you could say, like, there was a lot of pressure on his first career start for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now you see him really back into form. And if you're looking at ISO power numbers right around a 0.1, fantastic. Weighted on base percentages here right around a 0.2, absolutely fantastic. So for me, the pitching advantage certainly goes over to the Dodgers. King's going to be on the mound here for the Padres. He was one of those pieces that they got back from the Yankees in the Juan Soto trade. If we're looking at him on this early season, he's actually been very good as well because we're focusing on the analytic numbers, and they're telling us an ISO power number of 0.077. Phenomenal. A weighted on base percentage of 257. Absolutely phenomenal. We know how good that Dodgers lineup can be, but for my money in this game, we're looking at 2 pitchers certainly in form right now. I will take the under in this game overall, Ben.
Yeah, when you look at it for Yamamoto, to have 5 strikeouts, his K prop is 4.5. To have 5, heavily juiced at -142. He had 8 a week ago on Saturday in Wrigley against the Cubs. 6+, plus 150, an intriguing number. A ton of other baseball games on this Friday. Again, we've got a full slate, 15 games, all 30 clubs in action. In Miami, it's the worst team in Major League Baseball as of this moment. The 2-11 Miami Marlins hosting the Atlanta Braves. Max Fried goes out there for the Braves, who are hoping to bounce back after losing 2 straight against the New York Mets. A lot of runs have been scored by both Atlanta and Miami in terms of overs this year, total at 8.5. 2 more windy games with the wind blowing out in Philadelphia, and later today as well in a matchup where I forgot where it is, but we'll talk about it later. NBA handicaps next.
If you passed him up as a Heisman Trophy winner and he lights the league on fire like C.J. Stroud over a Bryce Young, you might not make it as a head coach or in your regime here. I just don't think they can pass over Daniels at number 2.
He's sitting at 5.8 goals saved above average. He has been standing on top of his head for this team, but defense has to help him out a little bit. The Red Wings defense comes alive just a bit. I think that they're definitely going to punch their card.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like, I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
A huge night around the association. All 30 NBA teams in action. 15 games on the third to last day of this NBA regular season. And really outside of Boston being the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference and in the 9-10 spots in that conference, the Bulls and the Hawks, there is so much more to figure out into this final weekend of the NBA regular season. Let's fly through DRS with the two premier NBA handicappers on this SportsGrid network, yourself and me. We start in Philadelphia. What a game it is between the 76ers and the Magic. Philly booked as a 7.5-point favorite. The over-under stands at 212. If Philly can win tonight, and we'll talk about Indiana, who's a road underdog in just a moment, there's a chance the Sixers could move up to the 6th spot. Sixers, 6th spot, 6 wins in a row for Philadelphia. Can they make it 7 straight, covering as a 7.5-point home favorite?
Yeah, I think we're finally getting to look at playoff atmosphere in Philadelphia, where it's, to start the season, middle parts of the season, and be playing just like an MVP candidate. The Philadelphia 76ers fans probably anticipated a top 3 seed at worst here in the Eastern Conference playoffs. And now it started to look like it was going to slip away, where you might even wind up in the 8th seed at this point. Now you have a chance to get to the 6th seed. That's going to be a great atmosphere tonight at the Wells Fargo Center. This line opened up at 6.5 at the FanDuel Sportsbook. You saw that graphic up there at 8. It sort of settled in at a 7.5, but a really low number on that total of 212. Now, granted, when you have playoff atmospheres in the playoffs itself, you don't have that same game flow that you have typically during the regular season, but that's crazy low. I like the over in this game, but I also like the Philadelphia 76ers to cover that 7.5. I think this is one of those games that the Philadelphia Sixers have circled here at this point and said to themselves, you know what? Nick Nurse is here. It's time to move out of that playing round. Let's show we mean business. I would be really surprised. Forget about the spread itself, Ben. Very surprised if Orlando comes in and wins this game outright against the Sixers. Therefore, if I think the Sixers win, they'll be able to cover that 7.5 points. And also, I think this game goes over the total.
Philly has won 6 straight. They have covered in 6 straight. They have gone over in 4 of the 6. They have gone over in 6 of the 8. Orlando, highly regarded as one of the better defensive teams in the NBA. They play with physicality, but the Magic over in 4 of their previous 5 as well. I like the over of what feels like a playoff total, but not quite a playoff game at 212. Huge game again from those Eastern Conference standings. Orlando right now 46-34. Same with Indiana. Those two teams 5 and 6. Philly only a game behind both Orlando and the Pacers. We will see what happens at the end of tonight. Speaking of Indiana, the Pacers on the road in Cleveland as a short underdog, just a 2.5-point spread. The Cavaliers, the home favorite, that is up there at 234. The Cavs trying to hold on to the 4 spot to have home floor advantage in the opening round of the playoffs. Indiana trying to be one of the top 6 to not deal with the play-in tournament. With all of the stakes, DRS, this is a big one tonight in the land.
Absolutely massive. And this is fun to talk about. It's not just we're going through the motions on a full NBA card where none of these games mean anything. We don't know who the starting lineups are going to be. Impactful games all across the board, as we just talked about the Magic and the Sixers. Seed line advantage is in place, and it's the same thing with the Pacers. The question here is who actually needs it more? Of course, the Cavaliers want to win. They continue trying to move up the standings, get the best possible seed. But the Pacers now sitting there going like, look, we drop a couple games down the stretch, we might find ourselves in the play-in round, and we want to avoid that. that. But you also saw the line opened up at a -3 overnight as a favorite towards the Cavaliers. The graphic showing that as high as a 3.5 points. But that number's been bought back to 2.5 now at the FanDuel Sportsbook as a favorite here towards the Cleveland Cavaliers in a total of 234. You know what? I'm going to go Pacers in this spot here. I just haven't trusted the Cleveland Cavaliers all that much, but Spider Mitchell back in that lineup seems to be healthy and ready to go. But I'll take the points in the spot. This is a playoff game, and if you're just trying to get the extra nod, who needs the game more? I just preface it by saying technically they both need it, but the Pacers feel like it's a little bit more life and death where they could see the Sixers win and jump them. They don't want that to happen. They pick up a win here. They can stay in that top 6. You get the picture here. Give me the Pacers tonight. I think we do get some pace, and it'll be a good competitive game.
The Pacers with a total of 234. We have also often looked at Indiana throughout this year and said over, over, over. Now, the Pacers have gone over in 4 of their previous 5. The Cavaliers under in 3 of their previous 4. But if it is a playoff game, and it certainly has that atmosphere, spread is short. Either side could win in a critical game for both. 234 just feels a tad high to me. Now, on paper, the marquee matchup of the night would be in Oklahoma City. The Thunder in the 3 spot in the Western Conference. The Bucks in the 2 spot in the Eastern Conference, still battling for postseason positioning. But again, on paper right now, because 34 in green, Giannis is not going to be out there. Oklahoma City, a very, very big favorite. 14.5-point favorite at home. Not a Midwest matchup. Only Milwaukee from the Midwest. 223.5. DRS, I know Giannis Antetokounmpo is not playing in this game, but Milwaukee is still trying to hold on to the 2 spot with the New York Knicks very much on their heels. And unless I'm wrong, is Dame playing in this matchup? Is Big Game BP playing in this matchup? What's the expected starting lineup that would see a spread at 14.5 in favor of Oklahoma City?
I'm going to assume this because I haven't looked at because the breakdowns are amazing on these final 2 games. It's like, every which way could happen. But the way this game is shaking out, because the Bucks want that 2 seed. They don't want to fall to the 3 seed, but it looks like they're waving the white flag tonight. Like Portis, rest, questionable tonight. Lopez, rest, questionable. Damian Lillard, groin, doubtful, actually listed tonight. And as we know, Chris Middleton listed as questionable as well, along with Giannis, who isn't going to play. So I'm under the thought process that maybe Doc Rivers and the organization is saying, OKC is going to be a tough game either way, but if we have some guys banged up, and technically if we lose this game but still win our following game to end the season, we'll still clinch that number 2 overall seed. That feels like the way it's playing out. So this line that opened up overnight as a -8 that ballooned up to 2 touchdowns here as a favorite for OKC, I'm going to buy into OKC because we know there's 2 things that you can let this play out. Of course, everybody gets paychecks. We do know that. But if it's widely known in the organization, we don't really need this game, so we don't care about this game, and our focus is going to be on our final game. We usually know how that plays out, Ben. 131-98 as a final. I'll back OKC in this massive number because it looks like the Milwaukee Bucks don't actually care nor intend to care about this game. But again, this could change later in the day where the starting lineups are announced and guys are going to play. But early morning, this is ripping in the direction for OKC.
Yeah, very much so. And again, if Dame is out there, if Bobby Portis is out there, if others in Milwaukee are out there, as Donnie said, it's probably 7.5, 8 in favor of Oklahoma City. It's not nearly 15 points in favor of the Thunder. Man. Now we spin it around California tonight, up in San Francisco. What a game this is going to be. Golden State and New Orleans. You love the games where both teams are going to be at full steam and both looking for a huge win to improve their playoff picture. Golden State right now in the 9 spot in the Western Conference, but could get into the 7-8 game in the Western Conference play-in tournament. New Orleans with a huge win yesterday in Sacramento wants another one tonight. Second leg of a back-to-back for both. Golden State was in Portland, now back home. New Orleans remains in Northern California. The Pels control their own fate, DRS, for that 6 spot in the Western Conference, and yet the Dubs, 4-point home favorite.
I'm going to hate myself for this, but I'm going to take the Pelicans. And I told you all show long, I don't trust them. It's them and it's the Suns, the Kings, who you don't really know where you're going to wind up on a day-to-day basis. Now, this would have been much more interesting if the Pelicans had gotten that win and being impressive and being on a back-to-back, and you were at home waiting and rested with the Golden State Warriors. But the here, opened up overnight as a minus 3-point favorite, and now going up to 4, and some other outlets as high as 4.5. I'm going to expect that you're going to get a full tilt effort out of both of these teams. I'll take the points in this environment. I want to believe in the Pelicans. I really, really do. But as you pointed out, this is a massive game on both sides. The Pelicans don't want to slip into that play-in. And if you're looking at the Golden State Warriors, they don't want to be that 10th overall seed in the play-in round. I'll take the points in this environment. I know I'm going to hate myself when I wake up tomorrow and be like, come on, man. Golden State's playing great basketball, veteran-laden team. You just said when the rubber meets the road, the veteran teams know how to win, and you back the Pelicans on the road here, which, yes, I'm going to do.
Golden State has won 3 straight, but they have not covered in 2 of those 3. They were a double-digit favorite in their last 3 games. As a single-digit favorite, Golden State has covered the number. They've won 9 of their last 10. New Orleans is the best underdog team in the NBA. 18, 11, and 1 against the spread. Best at covering the number. And the Pels are one of 2 teams in the NBA that has won more than 50% of their games outright as a dog this year. 17 and 14 straight up for the Pelicans as a dog. The other team that has a winning record outright as a dog, 20 and 18 is the mark for the Indiana Pacers, a 2.5-point underdog tonight on the road in Cleveland. So New Orleans knocked off Sacramento last night as a slight underdog on the road against the Kings. Phoenix will go to California's capital as a 4.5-point favorite. Here's another spot, DRS. Are we in? Are we out on the Suns in a game they must win on the road? What do you think happens tonight in Sacktown?
Look, I have a kid in the house here, and we always like to introduce Uncrustables into the environment. A delicious snack, peanut butter and jelly, fantastic stuff. You say, well, why are you talking about this? Because now I'm going to introduce you to the Untrustables in the lineup tonight, and that's the Suns and the Kings. I don't trust either one of these basketball teams heading into this game, but having said that, I don't know about the Sacramento Kings, and sometimes it just comes down to a talent deficiency. And I'm not even saying they're not talented. De'Aaron Fox is great. Domantas Sabonis, we get it here. But the Phoenix Suns trying to stay in that top 6 here with their big 3, I'm going to trust the line move here that the Suns go into Sacramento and take care of their business. That's where I'm going there. The Untrustables here, I'm going to trust the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, me too, I hope, right? I still have that Phoenix NBA championship ticket. This is a big one. The Suns, minus 1,500 to see the NBA playoffs, even if that means out of the play-in tournament with 1 win. This is where rubber meets the road. So, a full NBA slate. Here are some other marquee matchups. The Knicks have won 3 straight. They're pushing the Bucks for that 2 spot in the Eastern Conference. In the Battle of New York City, across the boroughs we go. Inside Madison Square Garden, the Knicks an 11-point favorite. Heat, a big favorite at home tonight in South Beach against the Raptors. Look at some of these spreads. The Lakers, a 15-point favorite on the road in the Grind City. The Timberwolves lay 13 against Atlanta. The Nuggets, a 13-point favorite on the road in San Antonio. Clippers, a very hefty favorite at home against the Utah Jazz. Here's one spot that I really like. Actually, 2. Denver in the first half, minus 8.5 against San Antonio. Lakers team total over 120.5 against Memphis.
Yeah, I like where you're going with those two because this is very rare, and I always equate it to like Week 18 in the NFL. Teams will tip their hands before the game starts, and that never happens in the regular season. We pretty much know who's going to play, who's not going to play, and certainly who needs these victories here, and as they scoreboard watch. So the Lakers should be full gas tonight, knowing there's a legitimate chance that the Golden State Warriors can get tripped up, and they can jump them back up into the 9th seed here. So I'm with you on that. You're trying to read between the lines, but just keeping it simple with games like the Philadelphia 76ers and the Orlando Magic. I think this is a playoff game for the 76ers. The Magic leaking a little bit of oil. You'll know what the Sixers are made of tonight. They come out with a 15-point win over the Magic. Watch out. They may be the hottest team entering into the playoffs here, but it should be fun. Everybody in action tonight. You can't beat that.
And I wonder how that all plays to the Bucks and the Knicks thought process for the 2-3 split in the Eastern Conference. If Philly's going to be 6 or if Philly's going to be 7, you don't want to see the Sixers at this moment. A best bet on a Friday. Next.
Boy, if you passed him up as a Heisman Trophy winner and he lights the league on fire like C.J. Stroud over a Bryce Young, you might not make it as a head coach or in your regime here. I just don't think they can pass over Daniels at number 2.
He's sitting at 5.8 goals saved above average. He has been standing on top of his head for this team, but defense has to help him out a little bit. The Red Wings defense comes alive just a bit. I think that they're definitely going to punch their card.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like, I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the Early Line, closing out these 3 hours together on this Friday in our week here across the SportsGrid network. He is Donnie right side. I am Ben Stevens. But before we go, we say farewell and goodbye with a best bet. It is time now for Bye Bye Bye. I mean, where do you want to go on this Friday? Full slate in the NBA with dramatic implications for the final weekend of this regular season. Full slate on a Friday, 30 MLB clubs in action today on the Diamond. Round number 2 at Augusta. DRS, fire off as many as you want.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Let's just keep it in Philadelphia here. We started out by talking about the Philadelphia 76ers, who I do believe win this game, but I think that 212 is a little bit too low. I understand the Orlando Magic aren't a great pace team. We also have to keep involved that the Philadelphia 76ers were down multiple superstars over the past couple weeks. Maxey missed a lot of time. Joel Embiid missed a lot of time. So the numbers might not stack up to what the points are actually supposed to be. So I think we're getting a little bit of value tonight over 212 in the Sixers-Orlando Magic game because I think the Sixers have a very good offensive output tonight in a playoff atmosphere. Give me the over 212. We'll relax and enjoy that tonight.
I have bet that as well. 4 of the 6 games that the Sixers have won on this win streak have hit the over. 4 of the last 5 over for Orlando. Playoff atmosphere, but just a pretty small total even by those standards. There's a lot I love in the NBA. Nuggets -8.5 in the first half on the road in San Antonio. Lakers team total over 120 and a hook for a team that just keeps scoring and scoring tonight on the road in Memphis. But I also did have a little bit of a win factor parlay today in Major League Baseball. I told you two of them. Over in Philadelphia between the Phils and the Pirates. Under in Cleveland between the Guardians and the Yankees. And despite Pablo Lopez against Tariq Skubal today in Detroit, a lot of wind in Comerica. We go over 7. Bet them all, bet none of them. Have a great weekend regardless. He's Donnie right side. I am Ben Stevens. We'll see you bright and early on a Monday, live right here on the early line starting at 8 a.m. Eastern time. Have a great weekend.